Welcome to Dave Talks Ball in the September 12th, 2024 episode. Folks, I just want to say I love Thursdays. Folks, Thursdays are the day. It's prediction day. We're getting the week 3 SEC predictions out there. We're going to be right. We're going to be wrong. But we get to see the fruit of our labor from the preparation from starting Sunday, Monday, Tuesday night of watching the film. Again, in today's college football, with as many guys coming into the program, as many guys that are leaving, coaching transitions, it's tougher than ever to pick these games. I really say you got to give it through week 4 to really find out a good feel of a team. But we have a jam-packed show for you tonight, leading off with former Texas A&M offensive line coach and NFL coach Jim Turner. Again, he coached with the Miami Dolphins, Cincinnati Bengals. We'll also discuss some offensive line play and misconceptions about it. And obviously talk some about the big matchup in Gainesville this weekend. You saw Coach Turner with Texags, Dave Nunes, Billy Lucci, and then over on that channel. And then we'll talk bowling. Is it too early to talk about? So I'll talk about 8, 9 different teams. Just break down the rest of their schedule. Games that I think are wins they can already go pocket, losses for sure, and the toss-ups. Every team has them, but we'll break down about the 9 teams. The only teams we won't talk about because I feel like it'd be a little mundane just to talk about the Georgias, Tennessees, Missouri, Ole Miss, Alabama. We don't need to talk about those guys. We know they're going to the postseason. We'll talk about the other 9 teams, what we think they can get to. But first, before we get to Coach Turner, we're going to get right to him. This episode is brought to you by GameTime app. Download the GameTime app and use code SECU for $20 off your first purchase. Again, guys, I use this sometimes for Major League Baseball games for the Braves. We got college football every weekend. We got Texas State, Arizona State in the room next to me going on right now. If you're trying to go to a game, use our buddies at Game Time. They give the best prices for the last minute. But again, a lot of games, if you're in the Southeast, that you can go check out starting this weekend. But I encourage you to go use our guys at Game Time app and use code SECU for $20 off your first purchase. But I told you, I promise you, we get Coach Turner in here. We're going to get him in here, and there he is, the man, the myth, the legend, Coach Turner. What is going on, brother? And I appreciate you joining us tonight.
How you doing, Dave? Good to be here, man. I appreciate you having me. I'm excited to talk a little ball.
Coach, I saw you today on Texas. You looked like you'd been in the gym a little bit, a little lean, mean machine.
Dave, I set the record for least amount of weight pushed in any gym ever. It's awful. It's embarrassing.
You couldn't tell it from the body, but yeah, we got Jim Turner, former Texas A&M offensive line coach. Coach, you were there from 09 to 11, brought back 16 and 18, correct?
Yep, 16 to 18. Yeah, I was there under Mike Sherman, and then I was there. I was under Mike Sherman, and then we left and went with the Dolphins. Then we came back, and I was with Sumlin for 2, and then I was with Jimbo for 1, and then I ended up in Cincinnati with the Bengals.
Yeah, so me and you were together in 17 and 18, and we both left the same time, around the same time. But Coach Jim Turner, JT's O-Line LLC. Go give him the follow at Jim Turner _ offensive line. So, Coach Turner, let's get to it. What do you do? First of all, what are you doing? What are you doing these days? Tell the people where you're coming from, what you're doing, breaking down the offensive line film. Tell us just a day in the life. What is going on in Coach Turner's world right now?
Yeah, so I was a line coach for the Bengals, and then we ended up leaving Cincinnati. I was Joe Burrow's first line coach there, and then we ended up leaving Cincinnati. Joe got hurt, and so we were out. So, in this business, right, as a parent, it's really difficult on the family, as people know. So we came back, and we wanted to give my son Mike a chance to go to high school where he wanted. So he said College Station. So we came back to College Station. I live here in College Station. I have my own company right now. I coach in the springtime in the UFL, in the Rocks League there, and for the Memphis Showboats. And then I have my camp. I have my company that you just mentioned. JT-OL.com is my website. And I do, I work players out. And I do camps and I work players out. I do recruiting stuff as well. So it's all based on that. And then I get a chance right now. We're driving back. As you can see, I'm not set up for this very well because we are driving back from Austin to College Station right now because my son just played in a football game.
Those are some dark roads. Those are some dark roads on that stretch, Coach.
There's some dark roads and there's some dangerous roads too. But yeah, no, it's a good. We're in a good spot right now. Really happy that I'm getting a chance I spoke to my wife about it a long time ago and said, one of the things I wanted to do was watch my son play his high school football game. So we got definitely getting a chance to do that and loving it. I'm
Good.
also
I'm
watching
glad.
this SEC thing, man. So I've been following all these SEC teams pretty tightly, and I got a chance. I'm telling you, Arizona State is playing Texas State as we speak.
Yeah.
And Arizona State is a heck of a team. Did you see? You saw what they did to Mississippi State
Oh,
last week.
you would love to block for the Scatterboo kid.
Oh my God! I went out and visited them this summer, so I went there and spent some time with Kenny Dillingham and his staff. It's
Who's
just an
the offensive
outstanding
line coach
job the
there?
guy's doing. What's
Who's
that?
the who's the offensive line coach at Arizona State?
I can't think of it off the top of my head.
But you went and spent time with Kenny Dillingham and them, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they're doing a heck of a
Scatterboo kid.
job.
Hell, they rushed, I think, for 275 last week. Now Mississippi State kept playing. How I talked about it on Monday's shows on where it was won, where it was lost. They kept playing that 3-man front that I think Arizona State was even baffled. They just kept seeing that look like, we'll keep taking that and handing it off. I mean, I think Scatterboo had like 27, 30 carries.
Yeah, no, let me tell you something. If he's not in the top 5 backs in the country, right, then something's wrong because he's legit. He runs hard. He runs mean. You can't get him down. I mean, there's not a lot of stronger backs than him in college football today. I guarantee you that.
No, I think you're right. But Coach, you said you've been watching a lot of SEC football this year. What are speaking of the specific matchup with A&M heading to Gainesville at the Swamp? Last time they went to the Swamp, me and you were both on the sidelines. We hit a game-winning field goal. I think Daniel Camardo won the game. That was when Florida wore those ugly reptile uniforms. It was that game, Coach. It was a night game. I think it was someone's last year. But specifically on Saturday, this matchup. What are some advantages you think the Aggies or maybe even the Gators have heading in to this matchup on Saturday?
Well, I think overall, I think A&M has a better team. Like if you just match the players up man for man, I think the Aggies have the edge right there. I think the Aggies also have the edge because they have a young coach, a brand new coach. So it's a new regime, and there's kind of a breath of fresh air in there right now when you start a new system like Mike's doing. And then when you look on the other end of things, Billy's over there and he's struggling. He's a good football coach. Don't get me wrong for 1 second. This guy's a heck of a coach. And these jobs are hard jobs and they're very competitive jobs. And so, when you end up at a place like Florida, it's like any of these SEC jobs, you got to win games. So I would say A&M has when it comes to that whole thing, just the mentality going into the game, A&M's got the upper hand. Now, I think that, when it just comes to like home game advantage, playing in the Swamp is similar, as to playing in Kyle Field. So
Mm-hmm.
as I've been to some of the best, almost every stadium in the country, all the SEC stadiums, a lot of NFL stadiums. And I really rank, A&M, I rank Florida, and I rank LSU as the toughest places to play a college football game. So our guys are going to be up against the wall down there at the Swamp. And, you're battling 102,000 people in the team. So in the end, they can't come on the field. So, it ends up just being U11 against U11. I think the matchup is outstanding. I think A&M has the edge slightly, but I think that it's going to be a great football game. I think both teams have decent right now. I think A&M has the edge running the football. I think A&M has the edge pass rush wise. I think they're just a little bit better in all those different fields. But having said that, it's only the second game of the year. So,
Mm-hmm.
having done this for a long time, you're never going to ever believe after 2 games that you have a handle on any team, right? Especially, I think it's really difficult. Ask me who's got the more difficult job this week. I would say it's A&M, and the reason being is I don't think you know who you're going to see at quarterback yet. And if they play Langway, it's a totally different ball game than if they play Mertz. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so that being the case, that's a tough challenge. Because both players, one who can also throw the ball as well. So you got those 2 components going on. So I think it's going to be a great matchup. I think it's going to be a great game.
Yeah, you go back and watch Florida a little bit. That right side of their offensive line, I think, can be had, especially by A&M's front, who's got, as you know, a solid front seven. Coach Elko, one of the better schemers I've been around. And that's an advantage, I think, A&M, you're being an offensive line guy. Talking about Florida's offensive line. Their left side, I think, from like Austin Barber, Najee Harris at the left guard spot, Jake Slaughter at center, I think is fine. But the Damian George, Crenshaw Dixon on the right side, I think could be something that A&M definitely takes advantage of. But, Coach, what are some misconceptions you think just the average fan, from like a layman's term standpoint, what's a misconception in regard to people when they're just watching a game at home, they have a beer in their hand, Doritos in front of them, when they're blaming the offensive line for giving up a sack? Where is something you think the just regular fan can make? Hey, man, that was more on the quarterback not getting the slide protection right, or the running back not stepping in, crossing over, and blocking. What is something you feel like you would tell just the casual fan? It's obviously not as in-depth intellectually football-wise as you, but just sitting at home, where do you think you would tell them a little bit there's a misconception when an offensive line, they're giving up sacks and stuff like that?
Yeah, so, like, people don't give enough credit to the play caller. Like, when you're a play caller, okay,
Mm-hmm.
and you're actually deciding on what plays you're going to run against each defense, if that person is not very good at it, you can see it in a game. Like, there's no flow to a game. Like, even if you have a great team, if you don't have a great play caller, a lot of times things just don't gel. Like, for instance, if you call a play action pass on 3rd and 5, right? Well, the defensive line is going to be teeing off on 3rd and 5. So your offensive line is going to get stroked no matter how you cut it, right? And so there's got to be a guy that's calling the right plays at the right time. I think when you just talk about misconceptions, I'll give a great example, right? You got to call the right things too. Like, everybody has this full slide protection at every level, where the tight end is involved in protection and they slide the line to the left. And I
Mm-hmm.
saw the Gators do that against Miami. And the tight end, I think it's Hanson, right? Is it Hanson?
Yeah, that's one of them. The other
89.
one was Boardingham too. Yeah, but you're right. Hanson's the blocker. The attached one. You're right.
Yeah, so like, everybody tortured Hanson over that thing because he got stroked by number 9 from Miami, and he gave up a sack. And so the bottom line with that protection is, you go to tight end 1-on-1 against 3. If they're sliding down to 3 guys, then you put your tight end 1-on-1. That running back's got to help the tight end. The running back didn't help the tight end with that that guy.
Can you hear me, Coach? He's on the road in the middle of it.
If you don't,
Coach, you there? Coach in the middle. He's on that back road from Austin to College Station. And have you ever been on that road? I'm telling you, if you've ever been on that road, you're in the middle of nowhere. Very dark roads. Back roads, about an hour and 45 that way. Yeah, it's a back. I'm sure he's losing a little bit of connection coming back from his son's game. We'll see if we can get him back on. Here he is.
and using his feet and getting off the football. So
Yeah.
there's different challenges they're going to have in this football game up front, but they'll do a good job. They're coached very well. Rob Sales, the offensive line coach there, and he does a heck of a job. So they'll be ready to go, and it's going to be a great challenge for them against the Ags.
Coach, 2 more questions, and we'll get you out of here. Again, appreciate your time. We're being joined
Dave,
right
you
now.
got me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Coach. I can hear. We lost you just for a second. But I was saying I appreciate you joining us. We got 2 more questions. Again, guys, we're with former Texas A&M offensive line coach, NFL offensive line coach Jim Turner. Coach, you've been in the NFL and in college, so y'all can use the still images in the NFL. How big of an advantage is it for you now live in the game at the college level that you can go use the iPads and show the adjustments, show the play to your players now? Can you hear me, Coach?
Yeah, Dave, I think you were just asking me about the new iPad situation.
New
Is that
iPads.
correct?
You were in the NFL. What is the advantage now to that at the college level since it's first year? I'd love to hear your assessment on that.
Dave, when you ask a college kid on the sideline during a game, okay, and you ask him what just happened out there, the answers could be compared to what reality. We're not doing it on purpose, but it's really hard for guys to retain information sometimes after if they just went through a 12-play drive. So then
Yeah.
when I went to the NFL, now you have pictures, right? So the pictures are different now because, you look at a snapshot and then you could get 30 pictures or you could get 4 pictures, you could get whatever you wanted. But you don't have all day over there either. So it was really, the pictures were more helpful than just listening to somebody tell you something. But the
Yeah.
thing that I've experienced in the UFL is we actually use the iPads in the UFL. So for
Yeah.
the last 3 years, I've experienced using the iPads, and it is absolutely incredible. You don't have to ask anybody any questions. You sit down and you watch the actual drive with the players. So when the game is over, right, you pretty much watch that whole game. So you
Already.
can really
Yeah.
correct. I think you're going to see a better brand of football because you're going to see corrections happen and people are going to get to the right people because you can see exactly what happened on every play. And so it really gives you, it gives you a chance to fix things really quickly.
No, that makes complete sense there. And
You
then
know,
final question again, Coach. I appreciate you. I appreciate you joining us. Last question here. I know you're on the road. We'll get you out of here. With the playoff expanding, with now you potentially playing 17 games, longer season, Coach Jim Turner, would you rotate more guys in throughout the season from an offensive line standpoint? Probably play maybe 7, 8 guys, maybe not 8, but 7 more regularly just to build that depth because the season's longer when inevitably you may face some more injuries. I've always thought, is your rotation going to be a little deeper? You can afford 2 losses now to get the 12-team playoff. Is that something that would maybe cross your mind?
Dave, 100%. Whether you expanded the playoff or not, just from being with me back at
Mm-hmm.
A&M, I always tried to play 7 guys. I was always trying to get those other guys in there any chance I got. And I actually played a couple guys as true freshmen. I played Jared Hawker as a true freshman. I
Yeah.
played Dan Moore as a true freshman. I would revolve him in there every other series at times in games. And he's now the starting left tackle for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So it helped him out, of course. He was good enough, of course. But I 100% in these leagues today, especially in this league, you've got to play 6 or 7 or 8 players because people get hurt. Okay, it's such
Mm-hmm.
a physical league. People just don't understand. But you're going to lose. You're going to get hurt at some point in the year. Somebody's going down, and as you know, right? So you can have the most perfect ship in the world, and if there's one hole in it, you got major problems. And so it's the same thing with that old line. If you have one piece in there that can't work, they're going to find it and they're going to exploit it. And so I think it's one of your jobs it's one of the ways that I measure any coach is how well do the backups play. So like when everything's perfect and everybody's great and everybody's healthy, well, that's when life is easy. That's like being a player, right? The first and second game of the year, everybody's great. Everybody's fast. Because nobody's hurt and nobody's tired. But later in the season, when you're hurt and when you're tired, how do you play then? And it's the same thing. So how does your offensive line play game 8, 9, 10, 11, 12? And that's when they play well in those games at that time in the year, and they're strong then, and you have depth then that has experience. Now you got a shot at those games. And the great teams, right, are the ones, like if you have a great, really talented football team, you can win 9 games without doing a heck of a lot, right? You can just win with those players. But it's that 10th, 11th, and 12th game. It's those games right there that if you have the right experience in there and you have the right amount of people that have played the right amount of football and they have experience and you've trained them well, then they can replace players in there and you never miss a beat. So I think that's part of your job. I've always believed that at every level. I got my chops busted at A&M. I got my chops busted in the NFL by the media when at practice I would play guys in 5 different positions. So I tried to get everybody a whack at center, but obviously some guys can't do it. Right? If you have a
Yeah.
first round draft pick left tackle, he's not going to go in there center. But
No,
the
we would
bottom
understand.
line is most NFL linemen, right? You want to make yourself a guy that an NFL team would love to come and grab, and you want to play more than one position because at that level, you only bring 8 linemen to a game. It used to be 7. When I was in the NFL, it was 7 players. So guess what? If you're one of the 2 backups, you better be able to play all 5 positions. And
Yeah.
so, in both of them, you loved it when both of them could play center. So, being able to play more than one position, I think that's your job as a coach. And then obviously getting them as much experience possible so that when their moment comes, they're able to step up and do their job.
No, Coach, I love that. You're right. That's a good point by you. You can judge a coach by how well his depth at his position plays if they're well coached. Like you said, when it's their time to get in, when inevitably injuries happen. It's a good point. I'll probably clip that one of you, honestly. I'm going to steal you. I'm going to steal it. But, Coach, I appreciate your time tonight, brother. You were gracious enough to give us 20 minutes of your time. Again, folks, Jim Turner, former A&M offensive line coach. You could have checked him out on Texags earlier today as well. Jim Turner, JT's O-line coach, LLC is the new business that Coach Turner he currently owns, but you can give him the follow at Jim Turner _OL. Coach, once again, I appreciate you joining us, man. It means a lot. Appreciate you coming on, breaking this down, giving us some insight on the offensive line. We could talk for hours here.
Dave, love what you're doing there, man. Look forward.
Appreciate it, Coach. Oh, I think he went out, guys. There's back roads, man. I tell you, the back roads of Austin to College Station. That's the road we were on from that perspective. But again, guys, Jim Turner, one of the best people around in the industry. Love how just how honest and real he is as a coach. I was with him for 2 years at A&M in 17 and 18. Remember, I'm your host, Dave Shoemate here. Dave talks ball, longtime college football personnel director in the SEC and other schools around the country. So that's how I know Coach Turner from that perspective. Again, give us a little bit of benefit of doubt here from the audio tech stuff. He was coming back from his kid's high school football game in Austin. They're driving back to College Station. So it was a little choppy. But I think something I took from that, I never even heard him say that, and I'd been around him a lot. You can judge a coach by how well their depth plays at their position when they get an opportunity to go in and play. Inevitably, guys, it's a contact sport. We know this. There's going to be injuries in the sport. So I think it's a phenomenal point by Coach Turner tonight, man. So hope you enjoyed that. I know it was a little choppy, but man, hey, you get a couple paragraphs from Coach Turner, you're gonna learn something. But again, he's coming back from his son's Mikey's high school football game. He's a junior in high school at College Station High. They're playing, forget who he was playing, Anderson, I think, right outside Austin. But again, we appreciate Coach Turner joining us. Go follow, give him the follow at Jim Turner _offensive line. Knows quite a bit about college football and especially offensive line play, folks. But let's get right to it. We're going to get right to predictions. I think it's Thursday. I'm chomping at the bit. We got a lot of just coin flip games. I mean, I saw coming in, injury report coming in. Connor Wigman, questionable. Talk to some people I trust, though. He's a little nicked up. He's going to play. So if any A&M fans are listening, feel good about who I talked to. He's going to play. Now, I think Tyreek Chappelle is out, but just giving you a heads up from that perspective. So we got a lot of stuff, specifically that game. My point being, I think that's a coin toss. I think close to LSU, South Carolina is close to one of these coin toss games. I know LSU's favored by 6.5, 7, depending what book you're looking at. But so those interior defensive tackles being out, Rocket Sanders, Lenore Sellers, Blake Baker's going to have his money cut out for him. But let's get to it, guys. Let's get to the first one. We're going to go in chronological order of the day. I'm going to preview the Big Five, and we'll get to the rest of the schedule. But first, let's get to Gus Johnson and the boys, baby. Alabama at Wisconsin. It'll be Gus Johnson, Joel Klatt on the call. Alabama favored by 15.5. The point total, 50.5. Setting the tone, as we always do. Setting the tone for this one. Interesting matchup. It's Kalen DeBoer's first road game, first Power 4 opponent since he's been at Alabama. It's at Camp Randall. If you didn't know this, what a venue Camp Randall is. When they announced this game, I wanted to go, but I couldn't. I mean, obviously, I think it was in college football when they announced this, but I couldn't go. But the interesting part about Camp Randall, it used to be a prison for Confederate soldiers in the Civil War. So that'll be interesting. The South's coming back, and I thought that was a little interesting part of that. But specifically to this game, outside of the location, time, big noon kickoff, both these teams really hadn't looked their best yet. Bama without both tackles, Caden Proctor and Elijah Pritchett last week against South Florida struggled. That game was 14-13 going to the fourth. Obviously, Bama pulled away. But it'll be a first time for DeBoer on the road and for Wisconsin and Luke Fickell. Maybe a little underwhelming so far with Fickell's performance at Wisconsin because he did such a phenomenal job at Cincinnati. And even when he's at Ohio State as an assistant, everybody's expecting a little more out of the Badgers in year one, maybe fair or unfair, and maybe so far in year two. I know they're 2-0. That was against South Dakota and Western Michigan. But it's their first chance on the prime stage, really, since he's been in the Big Ten in a non-conference game as a program to show, hey, the second season we've taken the right steps. I don't think the first 2 weeks they've shown that, but this is their chance to really show they compete against the best nationally. Now, this game, I don't think there's any big storyline. I really just think this matchup is the storyline. The matchups and progression for both teams are going to be the storyline. So let's get right to it. What's going to happen? My first question, what does this Alabama offense look like? I mean, so far, it looks very similar to Tommy Rees's offense last year, very boom or bust. I mean, in regard to that, Alabama is top 15 nationally in explosive play rate. I think they're right at 15. So they're scoring from far. I mean, they're shooting a bunch of threes from a basketball standpoint. They're scoring from far. They're not manufacturing consistent drives. Luke Fickell and defense coordinator Mike Tressel, yes, Jim Tressel's son, have fielded a disciplined, good defense since they've been together, really, in Cincinnati. I played these guys when I was at UCF. They were our rival. And UCF, you always hated playing. Cincinnati is always well coached. A Luke Fickell team's always well coached. They're going to play hard. They're going to play physical. Now, will they be out-athleted sometimes? Absolutely. But I think the good thing here, I was hyping up the defense. I think the good thing here, if you're Kalen DeBoer, Nick Sheridan, if you're Jalen Milroe, is Wisconsin's giving up their fair share of explosive plays defensively against Western Michigan and South Dakota. And I don't have to tell you, folks, because if you're listening to this show, you're already a smart person. But I'm assuming if you're watching, you're a big college football fan and you're a smart person as well, and you understand what I'm talking about. Alabama has way better athletes, obviously, than Western Michigan and South Dakota. If you're giving up explosives against those two teams already, it could smell trouble. The defense, it's going to give up some plays, I do believe, in this game. I think Alabama's defense is because you got Phil Longo, Badger offense, but I don't know if Tyler Van Dyke can be consistent. I think he's averaging like maybe 4.2 yards per throw. I just don't think he can be consistent enough to put multiple drives together to win this game. It's just not an explosive offense. So a recipe for disaster against a team like Alabama, maybe disaster is wrong. Recipe for lack of success. If you aren't explosive in college football at all in today's time, you're not going to win a lot of games. And if you give up a lot of explosives, you're not going to win a game. Wisconsin does both. They don't create explosive plays. Tyler Van Dyke hasn't really been that great since Rhett Lashley was his offensive coordinator at Miami. Now Van Dyke's in Madison and Lashley's in Dallas at SMU. So that was a long time ago, folks. And then they give up a bunch of plays on the back end, and they haven't played the best teams they're going to play on their schedule. It's just something to watch here, though. I'll say this. From a Wisconsin standpoint, they've been very slow tempo-wise. And Phil Longo is their offensive coordinator who's been at Ole Miss. He's been at North Carolina. He likes to go up tempo. He loves to go up tempo. They've been pretty slow the first two games. Keep it out. Do they come out a little quicker? I don't know. Maybe they probably want to keep Alabama's offense on the sideline. Just something to monitor. But I think Kalen DeBoer, if you go back and watch his career, I think the key to watch here is the early momentum in this game. There's going to be some play early in this game. I know the line is 15.5? Yeah, 15.5 point total, 15.5. There's going to be a momentum play that Wisconsin's either going to take or they're not early. Maybe they drop an interception that could be a pick six. Maybe they just drop an interception, or maybe you don't pick up a fumble or a big pass interference. There's going to be a momentum play, and either Wisconsin's going to take it or they're not. I think that's going to be the difference between maybe not the game, but if Alabama is up double digits at half, or does this game go into the fourth quarter really close? That's kind of how these games go. It's similar to Texas 2 years ago in Austin when Bama squeaked that one out. Bama scored, just could not take advantage Bama just could never get that big play to put them over the top to get up 2 scores. I mean, Quinn Ewers went out with an injury, but still very similar. You need to take advantage of that if you're Wisconsin. I just think ultimately it's going to be a big Jalen Milroe game through the air, and I really think with his legs. And if you follow Kalen DeBoer's career at all, he goes with the hot hand. I mean, last year, slinging it around with Jalen Polk, Roma Dunze, obviously Michael Penix Jr. He knows Jalen Milroe is the best player on his offense from a playmaking standpoint. I think he's the story on the ground. He's the story on the through the air. When Bama needs a big play, they're looking at Jalen Milroe. Give me Bama 34-17. I'm going to have a Bama bet on my money-making weekend picks down the line just for week 3. So I'll give it to you. Maybe not be the game, but stay with us here. But give me Bama 34-17. I don't think it's just going to be a massive blow. Again, I don't want to see turnovers like they had. I don't want to see penalties if I'm an Alabama fan. Let's get a little bit more discipline. Even you can say, I've seen some people like Kalen DeBoer is just too much of a player's coach, unlike Nick Saban. Well, Nick Saban in Alabama had been I think they led the league in penalties last year or the year before. One of them. They weren't very disciplined either. So it's not really just a Kalen DeBoer thing. But I think Bama kind of has a chip on their shoulder rolling this one. The key to watch, too, I talked about, Phil Longo's offense go up tempo. Caden Proctor, Elijah Pritchett, are they starting? Is Proctor at left tackle so they can move Tyler Booker back inside where he belongs? And is Elijah Pritchett at the right side instead of Wilkin Formby? That's something. If I see Bama's in pregame warmups, both tackles playing, I like Bama a lot. I like Bama a ton in this game. I like them anyways, but I like them a ton. If not, you could see this game maybe going to the fourth quarter. But I think at least one of them plays. I think Bama gets the dub 34-17. 34-17. I think it's about right there with the total as well. So that's the first one that we're getting out of the big ones. The other one, the other noon, we got some big noon ones, boys. We got some big Angler ladies, all the ladies listening to. We got some early ones. LSU at South Carolina. LSU currently favored by 7, point total 50.5. 12 p.m. Eastern on ABC. College Game Days in town. Set the tone for you. First, this one turned out to be a big game out of nowhere on us. I shouldn't say out of nowhere, but like no one preseason really thought this was going to be much of a game. I mean, I think College Game Day was going to Lexington this weekend if Kentucky would have beaten South Carolina and been Georgia at Kentucky for College Game Day. Now, College Game Day is in Columbia. It's in Columbia, South Carolina. It's going to be at Williams-Brice Stadium. Josh Pate's going to be there. Your boy Chris Phillips from the SEC Unfiltered channel. CP is going to be there. Now, specifically to the game, weather could be a factor. As of last night, I think it's going down to 69% chance, but it was up to 80% chance last night. It's going to be in the 80s, winds east-northeast at 10, 15 miles per hour, chance of rain 80%. It's going to be wet, but guys, it's SEC football. They're going to have a million ball boys out there with dry balls. The only thing you may have to worry about, I think, is going to be just footing. It's going to be footing. It's not going to be – this isn't going to be a 1960s, 1950s, people pulling their cars up for lights and we're playing in the mud here. This is the SEC. We're going to have balls ready. It's just footing maybe. But how will that affect this game? In my opinion, this one is strength versus strength and weakness versus weakness. Yeah, maybe weakness isn't the right word. Frail, tame part of each team. I think you got the South Carolina defense versus the LSU offense, the two strengths of both teams, and you got the LSU defense versus the Carolina offense that have question marks. That they both have question marks. But this one really feels like a must-win for LSU. They want to have any chance of reaching their goals for the 2024 season. A 1-2 start, 0-1 start in the SEC is, I mean, I'm not telling y'all anything to know that you don't already know. That's not the way you started. If you want to go compete for an SEC championship in Atlanta, if you want to go be in the 12-team college football playoff, they lose this game, they probably can't afford to lose another game. 9-3, you're flirting on it with the SEC this year. But as I said earlier, some LSU fans didn't believe me. Some did. This is the biggest game in the Brian Kelly tenure. Now, I know he's played in a national championship. I know he's played in an SEC championship. But specifically just from a momentum trajectory of a program. Year 3, normally been good for Brian Kelly. Year 3 at Cincinnati, went to the Sugar Bowl. Year 3 at Notre Dame, played for the national championship in 2012. Year 3, he even says, judge me on year 3. I've stated numerous times, I think the lack of defensive recruiting until Blake Baker, Bo Davis comes is why I had LSU 8-4, 9-3 sure. I still feel the same. The USC game did not change my opinion on LSU, but specifically this game. If you lose this game, if you're Brian Kelly and LSU, again, you have no wiggle room left to make the college football playoff. None. So massive game. If you win, you feel a little bit better. You feel like you're probably going to get into that Ole Miss game because all you have left is UCLA, South Alabama, and a bye week. You feel pretty good rolling into that one. That's why LSU would have started, beat USC, and rolled in undefeated. You'd have felt like they had a lot of room to play with. Now, on the other side, for Shane Beamer and his crew, for South Carolina, massive win last week. Massive win last week. I said it was a must-win for either Kentucky and South Carolina. Whoever left that stadium, whoever left Kroger Field last week is the loser, was going to feel terrible. I mean, especially after that offensive performance by Kentucky. They should have. But you win this game. If you win on Saturday in the crib with College game day, 8 wins is very realistic now. That's somebody who was not high on South Carolina. I thought they were in the 4 to 5 win range territory. Again, I say it all the time. I was more disappointed in Kentucky last week than the performance with South Carolina. And I think South Carolina's defense balled out. Still have some question marks on the offense. We'll talk about that. But I was more disappointed in Kentucky. You win this game, 6 wins. You're probably going to a bowl game, and 7's real too. 7, 8 wins is real. But it's not a must-win for South Carolina and Shane Beamer and his team. But it's a big opportunity. Last week was the must. This one you're kind of just playing with. You're playing with house money. But what is going to happen? Look, if the weather's worse than I'm anticipating and it's soggy and it's wet, that benefits South Carolina because Rocket Sanders, Lenore Sellers in the run game, they're really going to want to run it down LSU's throat, especially Jacoby and Guillory, the defensive tackle, out. And again, he's not some great player, but I said it in the preseason. That's a room that is not very good. So Bo Davis is going to earn his check this week. His best interior lineman's out. That's the strength of the South Carolina offense is they want to go run the football. Now, granted, they didn't do a great job against Kentucky last week, but I'll tell you this, Kentucky's interior defensive line is better than LSU's. It is. I mean, when Deion Walker's a full motor and not half-assing around, he is. But the strength of the Tiger offense so far has been the passing game. I don't have to tell you, let's be honest, I don't have to tell you this, how a wet and windy game could affect a passing game. That's why I'm saying if it's wet and soggy, and I'm seeing people's ankles up to water or something like that, which I'm hearing it's not going to be like that, this benefits South Carolina. But the heavyweight matchup to watch, as we all know, the LSU offensive line, who hasn't given up a sack this year, Will Campbell, Emory Jones anchoring the tackle spots. The South Carolina defensive front, we know Dylan Stewart, Kyle Kennard, TJ Sanders in the interior. They had 10 sacks for the season. Carolina was dominant last week. They had 5 sacks alone and 11 TFLs. If you weren't in the backfield, you weren't playing for the Gamecocks last week. There was a party in the backfield every snap. 10 sacks for the season. Something's got to give. 0 sacks given up for LSU so far. South Carolina's got 10. Let's set the over-under 2.5 sacks for South Carolina. You take an over-under, folks. You take an over-under 2.5 sacks of the game for the Gamecocks. Let's put it in the comments. Now, the run game, it's been lacking for LSU. Now, I think some of that scheme, they're not being patient enough. Joe Sloan's just not being patient enough overall with the run game, in my opinion, when you go back and watch the games against USC and Nichols last week. But it has to come on at some point. They're not that bad personnel-wise. It's a scheme thing. And flipping to the other side, I think the ultimate outcome of this game is going to come down to if LSU can stop South Carolina's run. We mentioned it. The rain, wet game would benefit South Carolina with Rocket Sanders and Lenore Sellers. Blake Baker then kind of let it leak a little bit today that Harold Perkins moving to the nickel star spot. Now, that screams to me they don't respect South Carolina's passing game, which I think could be fair. They don't really fear a South Carolina receiver, Lenore Sellers vertically. I think they're going to spy him in the read option game. I think he's going to be essentially the spy in the box, keep him in the box, watching Lenore Sellers in space. I think that's what you're going to see from Harold Perkins. They're going to try to get him in an LSU Arkansas 2022 game when they clinched the West, when he essentially won them that game. I think that's what it's going to be. But Whit Weeks has to be healthy. You lost Jacoby and Guillory. I think the Washington kid, the interior tackle for LSU, is going to have to play some meaningful minutes. Dom McKinley's already out, the true freshman. Not that he's going to make some big impact. He's out with a turf toe for LSU. They don't have a lot of bodies. So I would be on the 70-man travel roster for LSU if I played defensive tackle right now. So would you. They're thin, folks. They were thin going into the season. Now you're taking on some more injuries. Gio Paez, the Wisconsin transfer, is going to have to take on more of a load as well. But Dow Loggins and Shane Beamer are salivating and thought about the potential of what could be on the ground on Saturday afternoon. Lenore Sellers, Rocket Sanders, I think could be the difference just alone if LSU can't stop it. But if Carolina can consistently run the football and keep LSU off the field, their chances of starting 2-0 in conference increase significantly. Now, I do think Blake Baker, the defensive coordinator for LSU, is smart and aware enough to have his own plan as well. I mentioned they're moving Harold Perkins to star. Baker, in his last 2 seasons at Missouri, remember he was the defensive coordinator at Missouri, he's given up 22 combined points to South Carolina the last 2 years. Now, that one year was Satterfield, and the other one was Loggins. So it's not just Dow Loggins in these 2 years, but 2 years is the defensive coordinator at Missouri, in Columbia, Missouri. He's given up 22 points to South Carolina. Can LSU hold up front? That's what it's going to be. I think you're going to see a lot of stacked boxes. And I think offensively for LSU is going to come out throwing the football if the weather's not too bad with Nuss and Kyron Lacey. I think CJ Daniels, Mason Taylor get going early, maybe even Mason Taylor. I think trying to loosen up that South Carolina defense a little bit. I think LSU's defense is going to give up some explosive runs because they don't fit their gaps well. But I think Blake Baker forces enough negative plays, a couple of turnovers to hold off a South Carolina team that had a massive Garnet and Black party waiting for them 2 weekends in a row. I think LSU settles into the run game in the second half, controls much of the fourth quarter. Somehow, some way, LSU needs it. They've been quiet all week. Is South Carolina going to come in a little fat and happy after the Kentucky win? They're just fired up for game day to be there. I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm just saying that's something to factor in. LSU needs this more. They're the team that's going to be a little bit more desperate. I think some way, somehow, I think LSU gets it done. Like I said, they've been quiet all week. They need this one. I should they get it done because they have to have it. They have this again. It's the biggest game in the Brian Kelly tenure from a game. Like you can't really lose this. I think if he lost this and things kind of go south the next year or two for LSU, I think you circle this game as the first one that you're like, that's where it kind of started. But I think LSU gets the win, 27-20. Let's see what these comments say. Let's get in here. Matt Mayhem. He's got LSU. Appreciate you, Matt. LSU wins the game 31-17. I could see something like that. The only thing I really couldn't see is South Carolina just totally blowing out LSU. I could see South Carolina easily winning this game. See LSU easily win this game. If you told me someone blew somebody out, I would probably say LSU because of the explosive plays and vertical passing game. The queen of the Cox. South Carolina 28-24. Yeah, I could see that as well. I think if South Carolina wins, it's a fourth quarter game. I think that's what Beamer, Loggins, and then Clayton White are really hoping. Just give us a chance at home, fourth quarter. You never know what happens. Matt Mayhem again, not convinced South Carolina's an offense. Yeah, somebody said it, and I agree with them from a player conversation. Lenore Sellers reminds me a little bit of a very young Anthony Richardson. Very raw, can hit the open receivers. Is he throwing people open yet? Is he processing? Is he getting the checks? Is he setting the protections correctly? No, but he's still a young bud. But, yeah, I think there's some question marks as well. Seth Rogen. We'll talk about Tennessee here in a bit. I mean, they get Kent State is really bad. We'll talk about that one here in a minute. The Queens of the Cox, again, the COLA is going to be rocking. We'll be running through the mouth of that defense. Just pray our secondary can hold up. Yeah, that's essentially what we talked about. Again, appreciate you listening. And then finally, the Queen of the Cox. Don't forget about the depth at running back. We have 3 running backs that can urge. Yeah, I like Oscar Attaway as well, the North Texas transfer as well. But Rocket's kind of the dude if he can stay healthy. But that key matchup now, watch Harold Perkins hanging out in that box in that star spot, essentially spying, but watching out for Lenore Sellers in that run game. And also Blake Baker. I think he's going to have some stuff schemed up. That'll be interesting. It's going to be a fun game, but LSU really needs it. I have them getting the close win. Going to the next matchup, Boston College at Missouri. Missouri currently favored by -16. Point total 53.5 over at Farrell Field on Saturday, 12:45 p.m. Eastern. Set the tone. First, how about this Missouri schedule, folks? Look, we thought it was going to be a yawn the first 4 weeks, and I still think Missouri's going to take care of business, but it's a top 25 matchup against Boston College and Bill O'Brien and the boys. And they get a potential undefeated Vanderbilt team heading into the first conference game at Farrell Field if Vanderbilt takes care of business against Georgia State this week. I mean, is anyone more excited than Eli Drinkowitz about this? Let's be honest. I mean, he's probably worried about his team just developing, getting better week to week. Now he's like, I have their focus. I have their focus. I mean, it's got to be. Your team has to be focused, attention to detail early in the season to allow them to get better. But also, remember how I discussed college football is so unpredictable in today's game until around week 4. Here it is. I mean, who knows? Well, the opportunity, the continuity on offense for Missouri, I think, has been the handle in business. They've given up 0 points in these dismantlings of Buffalo and Murray State. I don't care who it is. That's impressive. 0 points. I mean, have you seen the way Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State, Notre Dame have played with their food? Don't take it for granted because the sport is as unpredictable as ever. I think Missouri's continuity on offense has allowed them to come out firing out of the gates. But again, I think their competition being better in their first 4 games with Boston College and better than we expected is going to allow them to be better down the line. I think this is really going to help them. If I'm Eli Drinkwitz, I'm fired up about Boston College coming in. Is a good team. But Missouri hadn't given up a point. I mentioned it. Now, to Boston College, first-year head man Bill O'Brien. We all know Bill O'Brien, former GM head coach, Houston Texans, Bama OC, former Penn State head coach. He's done a great job so far in year 1. Currently has a top 25 team he's bringing to Fairhope Field. Is this a great team? Probably not. Probably not. But I mean, TBD, let's be honest. But it's a solid football team across the board. Very efficient style of offense. Quarterback Thomas Castellanos, who I signed my last year in college football when I was the over-recruiting at UCF with Gus Malzahn. We signed him. He's out of Ware County, Georgia. More of kind of an athlete, but developed somewhat of a passing game. Florida State wanted him to commit, but they wanted him to play DB. But Thomas Castellanos looks very good so far. Don't look at the raw numbers, but go look at his – I mean, he's not putting up Jackson Dart raw numbers, but just real efficient. Go look at his red zone numbers. He's a 95% passer in the red zone with 6 touchdowns. It's a very efficient offense. I mean, they were killing Florida State on those wheel routes. Also, this will be the biggest challenge the Missouri offensive lines face as well. So I'm interested in seeing that with Armand Mimbo and the boys up front for Missouri. But what's gonna happen, folks? Here it is. You want to know a number I love about Boston College and Thomas Castellanos? I literally just gave it to you a little early. The 95% passer in the red zone and 6 touchdowns. BC is going to want to control this game on the ground, be efficient, and keep the Missouri offense, Brady Cook, Luther Burden, Theo Weiss, those guys off the field. Now, I don't think the Eagles are going to have the same success on the ground they had versus Florida State. I just don't, because I think Missouri's better. But the key will be, can they generate enough in the run game to sustain drives and speed this game up? I'm not saying tempo speed up. Just make this game go by faster again. Keep Missouri on the offense on the sideline. Keep that offense on the sideline. Thomas Castellanos, he looked good slinging the rock against Duquesne and Florida State, but is he going – he's going to have to make drives at some point to extend drives, whether that's off improvision or design wheel routes like I saw against Florida State. I just don't think they will be able to consistently do that against Missouri's defense, especially in Columbia. That hasn't been tested yet. The Missouri defense hasn't been tested yet, but it's definitely the best unit BC's played so far. I mean, I don't think we're pretending that, guys. Come on, let's call a spade there. But Missouri – too balanced across the board on offense to not get theirs at some point. So I think Bill O'Brien and the Eagles offense will be key in speeding this game up and continue to have the efficient drives. That's the key. Can they be good on first and second down to set up manageable third downs where they're not having to make Thomas Castellanos go convert 3rd and 10 to 15? You got to win on first and second down, and that's what Corey Batoon and that defense is going to be talking about. I mean, they lost a lot. They look pretty improved, though. I shouldn't say improved. They look solid. Better than I gave them credit for heading into the year. But again, they'll be tested this week. Something I would like to see a little bit, though, on the offensive side of Brady Cook. I thought he's leaving some meat on the bone on these third-level throws to Luther Burden, Mekhi Miller, guys like that. He's just missing them. It's almost like Steve Kerr drawing up a play for Seth Curry in the corner and just missing it. Like, you can't leave that on the table against really good teams. Is that going to come back to hurt him this week? I don't know. But ultimately, though, I just don't think Boston College is going to be consistent enough on first and second down on offense to keep Missouri off the field. I think if Missouri got up 14, 17 points, they could go run and hide. Give me Missouri slightly covered. I think they win this game 37-20. Again, the cover may not happen. If you made me pick it, I think they do cover. But because Missouri's running the football, BC running the football so much, I could see this game being quicker than people think and doesn't allow Missouri to ultimately cover the 16. That's where I can see this. But I do think Missouri gets a 37-20 win. Again, I think Eli Drinkwitz is fired up. I think he's fired up. Boston College is a good team. I think he's fired up that Vanderbilt next week coming in is a good team. He gets his team's attention. Let's go. Who are we talking about in the Gamecocks? Matthew Mahan back in here. He said Mizzou is going to win easily. Mizzou is an FSU. Mizzou is going to dominate lines of scrimmage. Mizzou has the better offense, defense, just everything. BC won't be able to run on Mizzou. Again, appreciate you listening, Matthew. Yeah, I don't know if it's going to be that dominant because I do think Bill O'Brien's a smart coach. Hell, I thought he used to get a little bit too much flack from Alabama fans. I mean, the guy was averaging like 42 points a game. I know Bryce Young helped him. Again, two things can be true at once. Bryce Young really helped that offense, and Jahmyr Gibbs and Bill O'Brien would call some good plays. He schemed up some stuff. Red zone, questionable a little bit. But this year, hell, like I mentioned, Thomas Castellanos, he's 95% passer, 6 touchdowns in the red zone. Can that translate to the field in Missouri on Saturday? I don't know. I lean towards no. I don't think they're going to be consistent enough. I just don't think they're going to be consistent enough. But give Bill O'Brien and the Eagles credit that they're a much improved team this year from Jeff Hafley. Appreciate you there. Let's go to the next one. Let's go to our next game. We got 3 more to preview here. No, 2 more. Got 2 more of the big ones. Then we'll get into the rest of the league. Texas A&M at Florida. A&M minus 3.5. The point total of 46.5. Woo! 3:30 p.m. Eastern. Texas A&M minus 3.5 right now. Point total 46.5. Setting the tone for you here, folks. Who knows how this one's going to go? I just mentioned beforehand. Connor Wigman's listed as questionable. Feel good about the person I talked to. He's going to play, but he is slightly beat up a little bit. But is this a must-win for Billy Napier in Florida? I think it is. You lose this game, you're probably done. I mean, there may be some people that tell you he's done already, but he needs this one. And Mike Elko and A&M would love to have it as well because, again, no one, just like LSU and Brian Kelly, no one wants to start 1-2, 0-1 in year 1. Also, I personally think we have a matchup between the coach that needs a win and Billy Napier the most of anyone in the country. And I think a quarterback that needs the win more than any other quarterback in the country in Connor Wigman. So we got Billy Napier, I think, who needs it more than anyone on Saturday from a coaching standpoint. And Connor Wigman needs it more than any other quarterback in the country. It's a fair story from setting the tone standpoint. Do we see DJ Lagway, the true freshman from Willis, Texas? Do we see him? They've already said Graham Mertz is going to get the start. There's going to be some packages, but how much are we going to see of DJ Lagway? We're going to see him, but how much? I think the Mike Elko defensive chess matchup is going to be fun. The tone's pretty set here, guys. A lot to play for. Must win for Billy Napier and them. Mike Elko need it. You don't want to start 1-2. Now, granted, Jimbo started 1-2 his first year at A&M, but his first 2 losses were to Clemson, who won it all that year, the 2018 Clemson team who won it all, and then Alabama in week 3. So we were 1-2, but again, I mean, those are 2 teams that played for the national championship here. This isn't Notre Dame, who just lost to Northern Illinois, and then Florida, who's just fighting for their job. But what is going to happen? You could tell me, you could show me a number of different scripts on how this game plays out, and I would believe you. I could see anything. But I think the 2 things that will be key is Connor Wigman, obviously, and how does the Texas A&M defensive front attack the struggling Florida right side of the offensive line in San Diego State transfer at right tackle, Brennan Crenshaw-Dixon, and guard Damian George and Cam Waits. Miami, Ruben Bain, Akeem Mestador did whatever they wanted to do against them. Mike Elko's a good defensive line coach. He's an elite schemer. He's going to scheme that up. I think the A&M front versus the Florida right side of the offensive line is the biggest matchup in this game. Now, turnovers, dumb penalties, that's going to equal out. That's going to matter in this game because you're splitting hairs here. Again, like I mentioned, you could tell me a number of different scenarios, and I believe here. I don't feel great about this one, but I think Mike Elko's ability to scheme up that right side of the Florida offensive line with his really good defensive front. Again, they played really well against Notre Dame. They just wore down because the offense couldn't do anything in the fourth quarter. I think that's going to be the difference. And not saying Florida's going to be shut down by any means offensively, but I think A&M's going to create a lot of negative plays against the right side of that Florida offensive line. Give me A&M 28-24. Again, similar to the South Carolina-Kentucky game last week, the loser of this game leaving Ben Hill Griffin Stadium is going to feel terrible. Again, I think A&M wins 28-24. I do not feel great about this, though. This game could go anyway, and it would not shock me. It could go any way, anyhow. Let's look at the comments here. On is the great. Don't be the team to end A&M's road losing streak. Yeah, it's a good point. A&M hadn't won a road game, I think, since 2021 at Missouri. That's the last time. That's when Jimbo used to go. Hell, when we traveled with him, we'd go 2 nights before for road games. We go Thursday night. If you played a late Saturday night game, you were there 2 nights in a row. I saw Mike Elko and them were leaving later. They're just trying to get in the games at 4:30 p.m. Eastern on Friday. Again, I'm more of those guys. Less time in the hotel room, less time players are just sitting around and stuff, the better. Jimbo thought, hey, go do study hall. You wake up, you're at the hotel. Some guys get some study hall. We bring the whole academic staff and let them do that on Friday. Go sit in meetings. But God, there's a lot of sitting around. I think you got to treat it as a business trip. I mean, Jimbo's road record would tell you it really didn't hurt. It really didn't help either. Any other comments? Captain thinks too much. Anyone know why we've been listed as questionable? He's a little banged up from someone talking close to the program that I trust. I called him right after that was brought up. I trust what he said. He's going to play. He's going to play. He's just not 100%. But I'll tell you this. After the first day of thud tackle practice in fall camp, no one's 100%. I'm just telling you, everybody has nicks and bruises that doesn't come out. But these injury reports, the SEC's cracking down. I talked to multiple SEC coaches, personnel staffers that are like, hey, in staff meetings, our trainers are telling our coaches, like, no, the SEC said if we're lying about this, they're going to do some investigations and there could be some big fines and these trainers could lose their jobs. So you're going to see throughout these conference games, when you're playing a conference game, a lot of these guys are going to be listed. I think the guys who are listed is out, like Tyreek Chappelle, or he's out. I don't think you can put a kid that's out and then go put him and let him play without the antennas going up. So take that in. But Captain thinks too much. I promise you, Connor Whitman's going to play. He's just a little nicked up. Moving to our next game, though, folks. Again, I don't feel great about that A&M-Florida game. I think that's the biggest mismatch. The A&M defensive front, Mike Elko, Jay Bateman being elite schemers against that right side of Florida's offensive line that's been struggling. And then the last one of the big ones before we get into the other matchups across the league. Georgia at Kentucky. This is where College Game Day was thinking they were going. Kirk Herbstreit came out and said it. 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time Zone. Georgia minus 24 right now. Point total 45.5. Setting the tone, like I said, what could have been the College Game Day trip for week 3. It is now turned into where is this program heading into Mark Stoops' 12th year in Lexington? I mean, some of this is his own fault from a success standpoint. The standard has been raised. But Saturday was an awful performance offensively. There's no way to sugarcoat it. In modern college football, folks, we had 2 quarterbacks combined to go for 4 for 10 for 42 yards passing. And no, Bush Hamden, Mark Stoops, and Kentucky do not run a triple option offense, folks. 42 yards. The full-time quarterback, Brock Vandagriff, the Georgia transfer, who happens to be from Athens, that's a storyline in this one, threw for 32 yards. It was awful. It was one of the worst offensive displays I'd seen. Give South Carolina credit. They went and handled business. They did what they were supposed to do. 11 TFLs, 5 sacks. But, man, Kentucky helped them. How do you bounce back from the performance offensively with the number 1 team in the country and probably the best defense in the country coming to town as well? And speaking of that number 1 team in the country, the Georgia Bulldogs handled business against the Tennessee Tech Golden Eagles last week. But that wasn't even the story from last week. Let's go to Clemson, South Carolina. Clemson had a big game against an App State team, a G5 team that wanted to come in and put a respectable performance up because they're trying to be the G5 rep in the 12-team playoff. Well, you know what Clemson did? You know what that Clemson offense did that the Georgia defense held to 3 points in Atlanta 2 weeks ago did? Clemson put up 62 points and over 700 yards of total offense against App State, who's a solid football team, by the way. That same Georgia defense held Clemson to 3 points in Atlanta. Very impressive. I think that Clemson offense, second year with Garrett Riley and them, are a little better than we think. It was week 1. This game is normally fast and sloppy. It's normally fast and sloppy. When I say fast, again, not tempo, guys. The game goes by fast. I remember, 2019 was like 0-0 at half. Ended up being 10-0. But, no, this game, Kirby usually keeps this one close to the vest. But what is going to happen? Again, what is the strategy of Georgia heading into this one? Could they cover this and win by 24? Absolutely, if they wanted to. Do they play ball control, though, and just try to get out of Lexington with a win heading into their bye week next week before they make a trip to Tuscaloosa? Georgia's going to win this game. There's no question about it. But how does it look? Again, these teams have had some real ugly, low-scoring games throughout Kirby Smart's and Mark Stoops' tenure. I mean, these two guys are essentially kind of the deans of the league right now. On the Kentucky side, the goal should be to just show up ready for a street fight and bring some kind of offensive identity into this game. Bush Hamden, Brock Vandagriff, Mark Stoops got to get on the same page. But remember, Kentucky's only played a game and a half, essentially, because against Southern Miss, they didn't finish that game. They played 5 minutes into the third quarter. But coming in with an identity should be the goal for the Cats this week. You're not going to go into the team meeting on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and before you go to the hotel on Friday, tell them they don't have a chance, and let's just keep it close. Let's be realistic. You got to have something to hang your hat on. I think defensively, the Cats can still have something to hang their hat on. They just had a few busts last week that Lenore Sellers took advantage of. But I think at the end of the day, to the point of this, I think Georgia wins 34-7, something like that. Like just barely covering. It wouldn't shock me if they don't. I don't really hate the team total, overall point total in the first half. What is it? I think 24.5. Wouldn't shock me if Georgia's up just like 21-0 in the first half. I mean, this game's probably going to be really boring. Kirby never tries to just go run up the score against Kentucky. It's always, let's play ball control. Let's just don't turn it over. If we don't turn it over, they can't beat us. And this is probably the worst offense Kirby Smart has played since he's been at Georgia. Maybe outside of no, really. I mean, because Kentucky, when Kirby got there in 16, kind of started hitting its stride a little bit. So, yeah, it's probably the worst Kentucky offense Kirby Smart and them have faced at Georgia. But, yeah, I think Georgia gets something like a 34-7 win right there. Mayhem Matthew, Kentucky's going to want to be – Kentucky is a Georgia wannabe. This is going to be a slaughter. The only way the box score is closer than what you see in the field is the weather indicates. Yeah, that's true. Weather can factor. Again, I just think Georgia wants to get out of this healthy, get into their first bye week before the trip to Bryant-Denny Stadium in Tuscaloosa in 2 weeks. Let's get to the rest of the league, folks. Let's get to the rest of the league. Let's pull it up. We mentioned that one. Tulane at Oklahoma, 2:30 on ESPN. Oklahoma currently favored by 13, point total 46.5. This game was close in 21 when Michael Pratt and them came to town. But Tulane coming off a physical game that they could have beat K-State. I would probably like Tulane a little bit more in this game if this game was last week. Because, again, Tulane doesn't have the top 40 the other teams do. Everyone's struggling with depth. I think the road trip, coming off a physical game, they're not going to have guys 100% coming into this game. I'd probably take Tulane in the points. I just don't think they're going to have the energy to actually pull out the actual upset. I mean, I think the Mensa kid at quarterback's a good player. 4 touchdowns last week. Just for Oklahoma, you want to see, can the offensive line get better? Tulane's an opportunity to go get better. They're not going to face an elite defensive front until Tennessee next week. Oklahoma has to get better at the quarterback spot. They got to get some receivers back healthy. Bill Bedenbaugh's got to get that offensive front. Those 5 guys, 6, 7 guys in that rotation getting better. I think it's close. If you made me pick it, I'm not going to touch this from a betting standpoint. I would take Tulane in the points, but I think ultimately Oklahoma gets the win. Tulane playing an SEC, a Big 12 team and an SEC team back-to-back weeks. I think that's tough. Give me Oklahoma outlasting Tulane. UAB at Arkansas. Arkansas favored by 23, point total 61.5. I actually like Arkansas. It's going to be one of the money-making week 3 bets. I actually like Arkansas to cover this. I heard Arkansas's got some tips a little bit on UAB right now. UAB's not a very good football team. They haven't been scoring a lot. Jacob Zeno, the quarterback. Trent Dilfer and the boys, they lost to ULM last week. Arkansas, Bobby Petrino, they're going to be wanting to put up points no matter who it is. I think this is a big bounce-back game for Arkansas. I like Arkansas to cover and win big here. Ole Miss at Wake Forest on the CW right after Dawson's Creek, folks. You're not going to want to miss this 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time Zone kick. I'm just kidding. It's on CW, but it's not right after Dawson's Creek. Ole Miss favored by 21.5. It's going down to right now. 63.5. Ole Miss's first road test, first road trip, comes with the interesting develops of that in itself. First true road game. Feels like Ole Miss they've done what they're supposed to be. They've been as dominant as anybody. Jackson Dart's just unconscious right now. I think Ole Miss covers this. I think Ole Miss ultimately wins big. Actually, like Ole Miss team total 44.5. And I think they put up points. I mean, they'd just be asking 13.5 more than what Virginia put up against Wake Forest. Wake Forest has lost to the Cavs last week. I think Ole Miss takes care of business. Maybe a slower start. Because I think Dave Clawson's a well-coached team. They're just going to get out-athleted. But I could see Ole Miss first road game getting a little bit of a slow start. They're due. They're just due. But again, Lane Kiffin mentioned it today. I think the thing that keeps Ole Miss on edge, a little bit is there's so much competition at most of these positions where he said, hey, if you're not going to play up to standard, I can just go put a next guy in. So guys are feeling it from behind them. And that's what makes good teams, folks. I think I think Ole Miss covers this game. I do. I think they cover this game. UTSA at Texas. Texas favored by 35.5, point total 55.5. This is an interesting one. Jeff Traylor and UTSA got embarrassed by Texas State last week. Texas coming off a big win against Michigan. How fired up are they going to be? I mean, Texas can really work on themselves the next few weeks. They get UTSA, Mississippi State, I think ULM in a bye week, somewhat in that order. Again, it's first game, SEC game at home, Mississippi State. You're not going to overlook them. But Texas can really, I think the next time they have a real shot to lose is probably against Oklahoma and then Georgia back-to-back. These next few weeks for Texas is a way for them to clean up some stuff. Again, UTSA this week, Mississippi State, ULM, I think bye week is what it is, without pulling up the schedule and interrupting the show. But I think that's really what it is right now. I can see this being a little of a lower scoring game. They're going to let Arch get in. I can see Texas not covering the 30. If they want to, they could. But again, this could be a total sleepy game. They play some depth guys to see who could help them down the road when they inevitably have injuries. I like Texas, obviously, to win the game, but 35.5, I wouldn't touch. I'd even maybe go the under team total or total point total in 55.5. Texas takes care of business. But you got to think UTSA is going to come in with a little bit of a chip on their shoulder in this one. Vanderbilt at Georgia State. Can the doors? 6 p.m. ESPN plus. Vanderbilt favored by 10.5. Point total 44.5. Can the doors get to 3-0? Head to Como at Fairhope Field, undefeated heading into the Missouri matchup. That's the thing. If you're Clark Lee, you're scared of facing Dale McGee, former running back coach at Georgia for forever, his first year. There's some SEC coordinators' names mentioned. Jim Chaney's the OC. Kevin Scherer is the DC in Atlanta. I can see this being a little bit of a slower start. Diego Pavia, we know about him. He's been that X factor for Vanderbilt this year. I think Vanderbilt gets the job done on the ground, but I think it's closer than we think. Again, I think Vegas probably agrees with me with the 10.5 line. I think this could be a little bit of a look-ahead game for Clark Lee and his boys, and I think he's a smart enough guy to know that is what he'll be hammering home all week. I do like Vanderbilt. Again, this game's at the old Turner Field, baby. Center Park Stadium at the former TED. A lot of Panther fans there. I expect there'll be a lot of black and gold as well. But I think Vanderbilt wins the game. They may not cover, though. They may not cover. You got to think Georgia State's going to be fired up. SEC team coming in, a good SEC team so far, an undefeated SEC team coming far. Just Vanderbilt can't be overlooking this, looking for the first SEC game next week. New Mexico at Auburn. I mean, this is Bronco Mendenhall and the boys 0-2. Their defense is bad. If Auburn can't get it going offensively here, it's going to be rough. But this game, 6:30 p.m., 7:30 p.m. Eastern on ESPN2. Auburn favored by 28 right now, total 60.5. 28, I don't know with Auburn's offense right now. But Auburn, if there was a game to get back before you hit these next two key SEC home games against Arkansas and Oklahoma, you need to get right against New Mexico. I think Auburn handled its business. I kind of like Auburn point total over 24.5 in the first half. I don't know. I mean, you feel like Auburn's going to throw the kitchen sink. They can't go look bad again from a perception standpoint here. New Mexico State is not a good football team, and they're definitely not good offensively. I mean, they're 0-2, or they're not good defensively. They've given up a lot of points so far. Toledo, 7:30 p.m. Central Standard Time Zone. They head to Davis-Wade Stadium to face the Mississippi State Bulldogs. Mississippi State favored by 10.5. Total 57.5. Man, I don't know. This is a game coming over from the east, from the West Coast back to the East Coast. They probably didn't get in until 5 or 6 in the morning from the trip from Tempe. It's a tough trip. It's a tough trip to ask, if we're being completely honest. I mean, it really is. It's a tough trip to ask. I mean, they're coming back. Mississippi State's body clock probably wasn't right till Monday or probably Tuesday. Jason Candle's been one of the more consistent teams, him and his Toledo team in the MAC. I think Mississippi State wins this one. Wouldn't be shocked if Toledo pulled the upset. I think Mississippi State just covers, though. This is a sneaky game. Mississippi State better be careful. The offense better be rocking and rolling. Again, I think Toledo's going to try to speed up this game from a standpoint of running the clock, keeping Mississippi State off the field. But I think Blake Shapen and them are just going to be a little too explosive offensively. If I'm a Mississippi State fan, if I'm Jeff Levy, my team better be ready. This is a solid Toledo team. Again, Vegas agrees with me as well, 10.5. And then finally, 7:45 Eastern on the SEC Network, Kent State at Tennessee. The fighting Nick Sabans head in to Neyland Stadium. Tennessee favored by 49. Point total 62.5. Kent State is a bad football team, folks. They lost to St. Francis last week, if I remember right. Yeah, St. Francis of Pennsylvania, and they lost to Pitt to open up the season. They only scored 17 points on St. Francis, folks. Tennessee should name the score, do whatever they want to do before the matchup. But Josh Heupel heading back to his old team he won a national championship for, the Oklahoma Sooners, to open up conference play. This is a chance for Tennessee to get Gaston Moore, Jake Merklinger, the backup quarterback, some options, get some depth guys in the back end. This is a name-your-score game. Tennessee can do whatever the hell they want in this game, boys. Kent State's a bad football team. Tennessee 2-0. I think Tennessee is a legit playoff contender, folks. They're a good football team. So this is a name-your-score game before they get warmed up for the SEC opener next week. But that's prediction time, folks. That was the predictions for Week 3. We're running a little long here, though. Coach Turner took her time. But you know what? We love having JT on. He is welcome on the show anytime to chop up some offensive line play. DeAndre Thompson. Big Dre. What up, baby? Dave knows the SEC. What up, bro? So Dre was a GA with us over at Texas A&M when Coach Thompson was actually there. If Dre's still listening, last time Dre's with the Detroit Lions. Dre's he's the assistant defensive quality control in the secondary. So Dre, I appreciate you listening, brother. Hope all's well, man. Lions got a good football team, brother. Lions got a good football team. Honest the Gray. I agree with your score. If Nick Anderson gets some snaps, otherwise I think it'll be another slow offense, 17-10 tutty coming off the defense. Appreciate you listening. Honest the Gray. I agree. I got to see it for Oklahoma. I'd be a little scared if this was last week because I think Tulane would have a little bit more juice, wouldn't probably be as banged up because K-State's a physical team. So I think that's why I give Oklahoma the ultimate edge. Mayhem Matthew says Ole Miss wins easily. Yeah, I think we're all kind of on board with that one. But let's get to who's going bowling. I know I'll speed this one up for you folks. I mean, we're 10-11 here in the Eastern time zone, but this could be a fun little segment for you right here. Do they go bowling? So I'm going to go talk about 9 teams. How do you break down the schedule here? Let's share the screen. Let's pull up. Let's start with the Arkansas Razorbacks, folks. Let's start with the Arkansas Razorbacks here. Let's go through the schedule. All right. So I think for Arkansas here, you see the schedule. They already got a win. So we still got at Auburn, Texas A&M, Tennessee, LSU, at Mississippi State, Ole Miss at home, Texas at home, Texas at home, Louisiana Tech at home, wrap up the season at Faurot Field. So I think that's kind of where you see that. So what are we thinking here? I think from an Arkansas standpoint, you can automatically count the wins. UAB and Louisiana Tech. That's going to give them 3 wins. That is going to give them 3 wins. I think the guaranteed losses for Arkansas are to Tennessee, Ole Miss, and Texas. That would give them 4 wins if you're calculating the Oklahoma State loss. Toss-ups. I think there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them. Auburn, or at Auburn, A&M in Arlington, LSU at home, at Mississippi State, and at Missouri. You need 3 of them to get to 6. Because remember, you're already at 3. You beat Arkansas Pine Bluff. I think you beat UAB. I think you beat La Tech. So they need 3 of their toss-ups. Do they get 3 of those? Between at Auburn, A&M in Arlington, at LSU in Fayetteville, at Mississippi State, and at Missouri. Coin flip, I think they get to 6. I think they just get there. Next week, sorry, folks. Power went out on us here randomly. I had to get us reeled back set. I apologize, folks. Power went out on us randomly. Let me get us back. We were talking about Arkansas. So let me just pull back up Arkansas. Let me pull it up. All right, so we got the wins. Let's go back. Let's pull up the schedule. I apologize about that, guys. we lost power for a half a second here at the house in Atlanta. If anybody else is listening from Atlanta, did you lose power? I know it's a big city, but in Peachtree City, did you? We lost some power here. It's a little worried we weren't going to get back on, but you know what? We make things happen here. So I'm going to share the screen again, show you Arkansas schedule. All right, here we go. So I think just so you can see the bulk of it, let's go back to, all right. So I think the wins here, like I mentioned, I think there's 3 already. UAB, La Tech, and the Arkansas Pine Bluff for Arkansas. Losses, Tennessee, Ole Miss, and Texas. That's 4 if you count the Oklahoma State loss. Tell me where I'm wrong out of that. I think that's fair. So we're sitting at 3. So we're getting into the toss-ups. At Auburn, A&M in Arlington, LSU at home, at Mississippi State, and at Missouri to end the year. You need 3 to get to 6. That's why the Auburn game in Jordan Hare next week is massive. That's why the A&M game in Arlington is massive. LSU at home, I think they get Mississippi State, but I put it in the toss-up because it's an SEC road game. I think they get that. They need 2 more, really. Can they get 2 out of 3 of at Auburn, A&M at a neutral site, and LSU at home? I'm going to say, yeah. I was impressed with Arkansas last week. I was more impressed with them than, this is wild to say, but South Carolina and Kentucky, and even Florida so far. I think they're going to get some wins. I like what Taylor Green and Bobby Petrino done. I think they handle UAB this week. I think they get to 6. Some way, somehow, they win 2 out of 3 of Auburn, at Auburn, A&M, and LSU to get to 6. That's my prediction from that perspective. Tell me why I'm wrong. Tell me why I'm wrong here, folks. Moving to the next one. Let's go to the next one. I think Arkansas gets right to 6. I think that's fair. Stop sharing the screen. Let's go to our next team. We're going to go to the Auburn Tigers. We're going to go to the Auburn Tigers. Right here. All right. So here's Auburn's schedule. Reading out for you. Obviously, they got the win against Alabama A&M. Lost to Cal unexpectedly. New Mexico, Arkansas at home, Oklahoma at home, at Georgia, bye week, at Missouri, at Kentucky, Vanderbilt at home, bye, ULM, Texas A&M, and at Alabama. How do we see this, folks? How do we see this going? How do we see this game going? All right, I think the wins are New Mexico and ULM, even though ULM's a little improved. That's 3 if you're counting the Alabama A&M game. Losses, Georgia, Missouri, and Alabama. That gives them 4 losses, including the Cal. Toss-ups, Arkansas at home, Oklahoma at home, at Kentucky, Vandy at home, A&M at home. You need 3 to get to 6. Do they get to 6? I think, yeah. Because I think they could beat Kentucky. I think they could beat Vandy at home. And I think they get 1 of A&M, Arkansas, and Oklahoma. And remember, all 3 of those Arkansas, Oklahoma, and A&M games, they're at home, folks. They're at home. All right, so I think Auburn's going to get to 6. But again, like I said, I think anything less than 8 wins is disappointing for Auburn this year. I think the schedule is manageable enough to do that. And the Cal loss sets you back. So I think they're that 6-7 win mark right now. But again, I think the wins for sure, New Mexico, ULM, that gives them 3. Losses for sure, at Georgia, at Missouri, at Alabama, it gives them 4, including Cal. Toss-ups. Arkansas at home, Oklahoma at home, at Kentucky, Vandy at home, A&M at home. I mean, think about it. Out of the toss-ups, only 1's on the road, and it's one of the that could be the worst team in the league, arguably, after 2 weeks. I mean, it's early, but arguably. They need 3. They need 3. They need 3 of those. So I think Auburn gets to 6. I think they do because it's at home. But that Cal game, they could be looking at the end of the year and being like, that's where we didn't get to 8. That's the loss right there. Next team. Stop sharing. Let's share it again to you. Let's go to the Florida Gators, folks. Let's go to the Florida Gators. Let's go to the Florida Gators. So they opened up in Miami, lost, got the win against Samford. A&M at home this week, at Mississippi State, bye week, UCF at home, at Tennessee, Kentucky at home, bye week, Georgia in Jacksonville, world's largest cocktail party, at Texas, LSU at home, Ole Miss at home, and at Florida State. November doesn't look as bad, obviously, with Florida State. You don't know with LSU. So we'll see. We'll see. But here we go. Y'all tell me if I'm wrong here. Florida wins. I don't think there's an automatic win right now on that schedule because they play UCF and Florida State at a non-conference. So 0 automatic wins. I think the automatic losses, Tennessee, at Georgia, or Georgia and Jacksonville, at Texas, and Ole Miss at home. That's 5 losses, including the Miami loss. Toss-ups, A&M at home, at Mississippi State, UCF at home, Kentucky at home, LSU at home, and at Florida State. They need 5 of these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games. They need 5 out of 6 because they got 1 win right now. Do they get there? We're less than 48 hours away from really finding out between this A&M-Florida game. It's going to make or break. We're going to really find out a lot of this league after this weekend between Florida, A&M, South Carolina, LSU. We're going to learn a lot this week, more than we've learned any of the first 2 weeks. I just think Florida gets to 5. I don't think they get to 6. I don't see them winning 5 out of 6. I mean, especially if they lose to A&M this week. I think they could get Mississippi State. They could get UCF. They could definitely get Kentucky. LSU, they could, and Florida State, but man, it's asking a lot. You lose this week, there's no more room for error. You win this week, you feel a lot better. Because I think you get Mississippi State next week because you have momentum. UCF better than they think. I think they get Kentucky. That's 3. Then you need to win 2 out of 3 of UCF, LSU, and Florida State. And I think they could. Starts this week. I just think they just miss it. I think they just get to 5 and they miss it. That's my thought. So that's the first team I think in the SEC this year that does not get to bowl eligibility. Next team. Stop sharing the screen here. Let's go to the Kentucky Wildcat, folks. What do y'all think? Let's get to the Kentucky Wildcats. Team that's been a little underwhelming so far. All right, so they got the win. The 35-minute game against Southern Miss. The embarrassing loss to South Carolina. Georgia at home this weekend. Ohio at home. At Ole Miss. Bye. Vandy at home. At Florida. Auburn at home. At Tennessee. Bye. Murray State. At Texas. In Louisville at home, a game in which they kind of just dominated that series, honestly. Let me go back to the Kentucky one for him. This is what I think for Kentucky. Wins, give them Ohio and Murray State. That gives them 3. For sure losses, Georgia, at Ole Miss, at Tennessee, and at Texas. That's 5 losses. Toss-ups, Vanderbilt, Florida, Auburn, and Louisville. They need 3. I say no. I don't think they get to bowl eligibility. What they did offensively last week just left a real bad taste in my mouth. It was bad. I just don't think you can't get that fixed, and the defense is ultimately going to wear down. I think Kentucky misses a bowl. I think 3 wins you see. They need to get 3 out of those 4. Vanderbilt's probably better than them right now, depending how much momentum Florida can get. It's at the Swamp. I don't think they're better than Florida. Auburn probably going to be a little bit more hungry in that. And Louisville, Kentucky usually wins that game, but you never know. Louisville just may be better this year with Jeff Brom and the boys. I don't think Kentucky wins 3 out of those 4. I think they miss bowl eligibility. And I see no way them beating Georgia, Ole Miss, Tennessee, or Texas. So I think they're just going to be, I think it'll be 4-18 this year. I'm serious. I'm down on Kentucky. I think they're going to be 4-8 this year. But moving on to the next team we got here, the Mississippi State Bulldogs. Unfortunately, folks, another team I'm not overly high on here, but let's get to the Mississippi State Bulldogs in Jeff Levy's first season. The rest of the schedule after the win against Eastern Kentucky, we're counting that one. Lost to Arizona State. They get Toledo at home this week. Florida at home to open up league play. At Texas, this road schedule is brutal. Bye at Georgia. A&M at home. Arkansas at home. UMass at home. At Tennessee. Bye. Missouri at home. And at Ole Miss. I mean, you play at Tennessee, at Georgia, at Texas, and at Ole Miss. I mean, that's the toughest road schedule in the league. I mean, it is. I mean, I think for sure wins Toledo, UMass. I'm not for sure against Toledo, but for the sake of the argument, we're going to give it to them. That's 3. Losses for sure. Texas, Georgia, A&M, Tennessee, Missouri, Ole Miss. That's 7 losses. They're automatically not going to a bowl game. Toss-ups, Florida and Arkansas. State's not getting the 6, folks. They're just not. I think 4 to 5 wins should be the goal. Again, win the rest of your non-cons. Try to steal a conference game somewhere. Is it Arkansas at home? Florida maybe at home if they're coming off a loss. Just, I don't know. Yeah, I said the goal going into this year for Jeff Levy, win 5 games. You never want to be fired up about a losing record, but win all your non-cons, win a conference game. Obviously, with them losing to Arizona State, that drops it. Next team. Let's go the Oklahoma Sooners. Let's go the Oklahoma Sooners, folks. So their schedule. The rest of it. Temple, they got the win. They got the win against Houston in a rough one. Tulane this week. Tennessee at home to open up league play. At Auburn. Bye. Texas in the Red River rivalry, South Carolina at home, at Ole Miss, Maine at home, at Missouri, bye, Alabama at home, and then at LSU to end the year. I think the wins, let's give them Tulane for argument's sake. Maine, that's 4. Losses, no guaranteed losses. I don't think there's any guaranteed losses. There's not a game Oklahoma can't win. So toss-ups, they need 2 of these to get to 6. Tennessee, Auburn, Texas, South Carolina, at Ole Miss, at Missouri, Bama at home, and at LSU. They need 2 of these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 games. I think Oklahoma gets to that 6 to 8 win range, if I'm being honest here. Am I dumb in thinking that? I don't think so. I think that's what they're about. Like, they're a 7, 8 win team, and a lot of it is because of the schedule this year. So that's why I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. And I do think Oklahoma goes bowling this year, folks. I really do. So I feel comfortable in that. No guaranteed losses, giving them a couple of wins, but a ton of toss-up games. That's how I kind of feel like everybody kind of felt heading into the season. The next team we got here, the South Carolina Gamecocks, coming in hot as anybody. Let's pull up the Gamecock schedule for a year. They got a big one this weekend. We go a long way to get to 7, 8 wins. Got the win against Old Dominion. Got the win against Kentucky. Get LSU this week at home. Host Akron next week. Bye. Ole Miss at home. At Alabama. At Oklahoma. Bye. A&M at home. At Vanderbilt. Missouri at home. Wofford at home. At Clemson. I got the automatic wins. Akron and Wofford. That gives them 4 in total. It gives them 4 wins in total. I think the for sure losses, Ole Miss and at Alabama. I think the toss-ups are LSU, Oklahoma, A&M, Vandy, Missouri, and Clemson. They need 2. I think they need 2 of these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They need 2. This LSU game is massive, man. At Oklahoma, I think it's going to be tough. They get Oklahoma coming off the Red River rivalry. A&M, what's the momentum there? Vandy, that'll be an interesting. Missouri, South Carolina hadn't beat Missouri since Shane Beamer's in there, and then it's at Clemson. They need 2. Man, they win this weekend, they're going to get to 6. If they lose, it's a coin toss. I think South Carolina loses this weekend, so I'm going to stick with 5. I just think this weekend's going to determine if they go to a bowl or not. They win, they're going bowling, could win 7 or 8 on the upside. If they lose, I think they're still fighting for that 5-win total. Sorry, Gamecock fans. It's just kind of how I feel about that one. Again, trying to get through these a little faster. We're going a little over. And then let's go. Got 2 more. We got A&M and Vandy. Share this one. A&M schedule. Took the opening loss against Notre Dame. Beat McNeese last week. At Florida this week. We discussed that one. Bowling Green at home, who gave Penn State all they wanted. Arkansas and Arlington. Missouri at home, bye week at Mississippi State, LSU at home, at South Carolina, bye week, New Mexico State at home, at Auburn, and Texas. For A&M, it's pretty simple. I think the wins are Bowling Green, Mississippi State, New Mexico State. That's 4 wins right there, including the McNeese State game. No for sure losses. I think the toss-ups are Florida this week on the road, Arkansas and Dallas, Missouri, LSU, South Carolina, Auburn, and Texas. They need 2 of those. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 games. A&M's going to go bowling. I think they're a 7, 8 win team. I thought going into the year they're probably closer to 9. It's going to be key. Can Connor Wigman stay healthy all year? He's banged up. He was listed questionable on the injury sheet this week. We'll see. We'll see, folks. I think they get to 7, 8 wins. I think A&M's definitely going bowling. No for sure losses. Similar to Oklahoma, there's no game they can't go win. But there's a lot of toss-ups, and A&M needs 2 of them. I think they're going to get 2 out of 3. A&M, again, 7, 8 win range. They're going bowling. And then finally, the Vanderbilt Commodores, folks. The Vanderbilt Commodores. Let's go to that schedule. Does Vanderbilt get to 6, folks? That's the big question. Let's start it up. So they're 2-0. They beat Virginia Tech, beat Alcorn State, get Georgia State at home in a sleepy game. First SEC game at Missouri, bye week. Alabama at home, at Kentucky, Ball State at home, Texas at home, at Auburn, South Carolina at home, bye week, at LSU, Tennessee at home. I have the wins for Vanderbilt, Georgia State and Ball State. That gives them 4, including their 2 wins already against Alcorn and Virginia Tech. I think the for sure losses are Missouri, Alabama, Texas, LSU, and Tennessee. Toss-ups, Kentucky, Auburn, and South Carolina. They need 2 out of those 3 to get to 6 because I'm counting they already have the 4 wins from Georgia State, Ball State, Virginia Tech, and Alcorn State. So they need 2 out of 3 against Kentucky, Auburn, and South Carolina. Do they get that? I don't know. I don't think so, unfortunately. I think they get to 5. I think they'd be satisfied with that if they could just get a league win and you win all 4 of your non-cons. I just don't think they get to 6 till I see it. I think they're going to be at 5. So I think bowl game-wise, as we stand right now, I have 3 teams that I think are going to miss postseason play. It's Kentucky, Florida, and Vanderbilt. The old SEC East, folks. But, guys, I thought that was a fun exercise. Wanted to get into that just a minute. But, guys, I appreciate you joining us tonight. I know power went out for just a minute. But just wanted to see if we're still rolling here on the SEC Unfiltered channel. And yeah, we are. We're still rolling. Everything's connected still. Just making sure before we get into the last segment of the show, guys. Again, I appreciate y'all joining us. Again, this show is sponsored by our friends over at GameTime app. Download the GameTime app and use code SECU for $20 off your first purchase. Now, guys, you know what time it is. We're getting into money-making weekend, folks. It's money-making weekend 3. So far, first 2 weeks, we could definitely be better. We're 9-14 on the season, below 50%. We got to get better. But again, like I said, the sport's harder than ever to predict in college football now. You really don't know a team till week 4. I say that. I talk to college football people all the time. People in the buildings, they agree. These teams don't even know how their own teams are going to come out week 1 and 2 with as much the lack of continuity between the coaches and players. But here you go. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 picks for you to close out the night. Going to Madison, Wisconsin. Give me the Alabama Crimson Tide at Wisconsin minus 7.5 in the first half, especially if Caden Proctor and Elijah Pritchett go, the both tackles. I think Alabama's up double digits at half. I like the Tide minus 7.5 in the first half. I think Notre Dame, Purdue, my next one. Give me the under. 46.5. I don't like either one of these offenses. Purdue's coming off a bye. I think they're going to have a good defensive plan. I think this game goes under. I think it goes under 46.5. Then we're going to go to the Rose Bowl. Big Ten game right here. I'm going to take Indiana minus 3 at UCLA. Give me Kirk Signetti and the boys. Give me the Sig and the boys. Minus 3. I like Indiana in this one. And then at some point, guys, we're in a rivalry game here. The Civil War. Oregon at Oregon State. Oregon favored by minus 13.5. I'm going to take Oregon here. I keep betting on them each week. I took them against Boise State, one of our losses. They're going to turn it on at some point. I think it's this week. I don't feel confident in it, but at some point, Oregon and Dan Lanning's going to get it going. I'm laying the 13.5. Give me the Ducks. Another SEC game. Missouri minus 16 against Boston College at home, folks. I like them covering. I feel pretty confident in that. I think they're going to play well, keep Boston College in check on first and second down, make Tommy Castellanos go beat them on 3rd and long situations. I think ultimately Missouri takes control in the 4th quarter. I like them to cover this 16. Give me Missouri minus 16. Then a random game, UMass versus Buffalo. Give me the UMass team total. The team total for the Minutemen under 20.5. UMass ain't scoring on many people. Pete Limbo and Buffalo, they played Missouri last week. They're going to put up a good game plan. They're solid on defense. They gave up, 35, 36 to Missouri last week. I like the team total under for Missouri for the Minutemen, 20.5. I mentioned it earlier in the Arkansas UAB preview. I like Arkansas minus 24.5. Bobby Petrino and the boys, Taylor Green, are going to work out some kinks. They're going to still want to be rocking and rolling on offense. I think they got some of UAB stuff from talking to people. They got some tips. I think they cover this pretty easily. I'm honestly pretty confident this week. Give me Arkansas minus 24.5 at home against UAB. Texas, UTSA. I mentioned it. This is going to be a sleepy game. Texas coming back from Ann Arbor, biggest game of the year. Jeff Traylor, UTSA, they're embarrassed off their performance against Texas State last week. Give me the under 56.5. I think Texas is going to get some guys out early, going to want to see their depth, their competitive depth guys who could help them down the line. I think it's a game they kind of sleepwalk through. Give me the under 56.5. Toledo, Mississippi State, folks. Toledo, Mississippi State. Under 59. I think Toledo's going to try to slow this game down, run the football. I think Mississippi State's going to be sleepwalking a little bit through this one, maybe looking ahead to the conference opener against Florida, coming back from a West Coast road trip, late night game. They probably didn't get back to Starkville 6 a.m. Body clock's not right till Tuesday. I just kind of like the under. I think it's going to be a sloppy game. Give me the under 59.5 in Starkville. 3 more, folks. Auburn, first half, point total over 23.5 against New Mexico. I think they're going to try to throw their kitchen sink at them. Probably see a little bit more to Damari Alston, Jaquez Hunter. I think they get over 23.5 in the first half. I like Auburn. They got to go look pretty good offensively. Ole Miss, I think team total 43.5 at Wake Forest. I think Ole Miss scores over 43.5. I mentioned that's only 13 points more than Virginia had against Wake Forest. And Wake Forest has lost to the Cavs last week. I think Ole Miss doesn't. Lane Kiffin said it's as healthy as they've been. I think it's a focused team. First road game could start off slow, but I think ultimately Ole Miss scores over 43.5. And then finally, bet all year. Fade the Baylor Bears, baby. Fade them. I would have covered it against Utah last week if Cam Rising, the quarterback for Utah, didn't get it go out last week. But give me the Air Force Falcons plus 17.5 at Baylor. I don't like this Dave Aranda team. This could probably be the last year for him. Anytime you go hire a former Big 12, former head coach, Big 12 OC, Jake Spavital, kind of waving the white flag. So money-making weekend, folks. 12 bets for you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yeah, 12 for you. Alabama minus 7.5 first half at Wisconsin. Notre Dame, Purdue under 46.5. Indiana minus 3 at the Rose Bowl against UCLA. Oregon in the Civil War on the road. I think they finally get it clicking, minus 13.5 against the Beavers of Oregon State. I think Missouri takes control in the second half. I think they win, cover minus 16 against Boston College. UMass, team total under 20.5 versus Pete Limbo and the Buffalo Bulls. Arkansas minus 24 at home against UAB. Bounce back game after a tough loss against Oklahoma State last week. Texas UTSA under 56.5. I think Texas kind of sleepwalks to this, get some depth guys in. I think UTSA is going to have a little pride. Jeff Traylor and that crew is going to show out a little bit. No chance of winning. Probably they may not even cover, but I think it's just a sleepy game for Texas. Toledo, Mississippi State under 59.5. I think it's going to be a sloppy game. Auburn first half total over 23.5 points for the Tigers in the first half. They got to. Ole Miss over 43.5 points at Wake. I think they do that. And then I'm fading Baylor for the rest of your folks. Already mark it down. Air Force plus 17.5 in Waco. But guys, that's it for tonight's show. I appreciate you joining us. We went an hour and a half. I'm sorry we faded out. The power went out. We got back on. I don't think it allowed people to comment anymore. I saw Mayhem Matthews, the last comment at 9:04. We probably had more comments, but I apologize, guys. There's 737 of you listening right now. I appreciate you. We had former Texas A&M offensive line coach Jim Turner, NFL, Miami Dolphins, Cincinnati Bengals offensive line coach. Remember, he mentioned he was Joe Burrow's. He was the offensive line coach when the Bengals drafted Joe Burrow, one of the best guys in the world. He's going to get back into coaching. He was driving back from his son's game from Austin to College Station. Appreciate him joining us. The thing that stuck with me from that, he said he judges coaches by how good they are is when their depth comes into the game. Are they coachable? Are they disciplined? He never told me that before, but that's something I took from this conversation. We may clip that one. That was a good talk there from Coach Jim Turner. We previewed all the week 3 matchups. Again, I think LSU gets it done in Columbia. I think Bama gets it done in Madison. I think A&M, some way, somehow, don't feel very confident in this one, gets it done in the Swamp. You tell me a million different things. Georgia gets it done against Kentucky in the big ones, and I think Missouri gets it done against Boston College. We had some other ones as well. I think Ole Miss looks good against Wake Forest. We previewed all the SEC matchups, guys, across the board. Then who was going bowling? I had 3 teams not making the postseason. Florida not getting to 6, Kentucky not getting to 6, and Vanderbilt just missing it at 5, guys. Then I gave you my money-making weekend bets, all 12 bets. It's early, guys. Don't fade us yet. Picks are going to be coming in strong again. You don't know what these teams have till week 4. Don't judge us till about week 4. I'm not trying to sound like Brian Kelly. Judge me year 3. But I promise here, Dave Talks Ball, Dave Show, we're going to deliver here for you guys. But again, in all seriousness, guys, I appreciate you joining us on tonight's episode of Dave Talks Ball. I love Thursdays, guys. It's prediction time. It's put up or shut up. You get to see the fruit of your labor from preparation come to fruition. It's going to be a phenomenal week of football. I saw some people are kind of down on the weekend. But, hey, we got college football, guys. We got some significant matches. We're going to find out a lot about college football in the SEC this week. South Carolina, LSU is going to tell us a lot. Florida, Texas A&M is going to tell us a lot. A lot of momentum games coming up this weekend, guys. But, again, this episode brought to you by our buddies over at GameTime app. Use code SECU for $20 off your first purchase. Go use them this weekend if you want to go to a college football game. But, again, I'm your host, Dave Shoemate, longtime college football personnel director in the SEC and across multiple other college football teams outside the SEC landscape. But I appreciate you joining us tonight. You have a phenomenal weekend.